What if your legacy is doable and it doesn't have to be scary? I have the pleasure to introduce you to Linda Southwood. She is joining us this lovely Friday morning from the United Kingdom. She is a property investor and she helps parents pass on their wealth to the next and future generations, digging deep to understand the purpose of their legacy or your legacy in this conversation as part of preparing the family thoroughly to receive it. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it is my honor, and I think you're joining us today from a boat. You're on a boat.
I am. I'm along the River Thames. Yeah.
That's lovely. That's lovely. So let's start with the problem. And I always like to start here for the context of what it is the listener or the viewer is going through. Is it a
Mhm.
lack of knowledge, a lack of conversation? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that many parents who have wealth or assets, might be property, but other things as well, often have in their minds that passing that on to the family, the next generation, generations beyond that, and so it's often a really clear intention. That's what they'd like to do, but they're not really quite sure how to start. And so there's lots and lots and lots of really good advice out there around tax, around what to do with your money, how to preserve it, how to, structure things, which is fab. And the bit that I think is missing is really drilling down on what does this legacy actually mean? Why are you doing it? And that's more about the emotional and relational aspects of leaving a legacy than it is the structure. And I think it's those conversations and that part of it which often precedes the structures and the decisions you're going to make beyond. Those are the bits that often either get skipped or they don't happen, or people are not quite sure what to do.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's definitely a lack of familiarity around holding these conversations, where to begin, how to
Yeah.
approach it in the right types of questions, or even just setting the stage so that the family members or individuals, if they're self-made, where do they begin? I think and there's not a
Mm.
lot of reference points. I think now we're beginning as a society and a culture to start to have consciousness around this subject. Yes.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't know anyone who's done this, then you kind of look around maybe your friendship group or your peer group or whatever, and you kind of think, well, if you had some role models, you'd be perhaps approaching those people and going, hey, how have you done this? This is impressive. What have you done and how have you done it? But if you don't have those points of reference, then it's kind of you on your own. And I just think that I'd like to kind of open up some of those conversations. Everybody's family and circumstances are going to be different, and this isn't a one size fits all kind of sausage factory, or we all kind of go along and we come out the same. As I say, it's often one size fits no one. But actually being able to tweak and move and have something that reflects your family makeup, what you've done in terms of growing wealth, and what you would like to do with it. Those are really super individual decisions to make.
Yes, yes. What I like about what you just shared is that that is a skill set that might be brand new for some individuals, because how an entrepreneur or a founder made their money is one skill set.
Mm.
But being able to be emotionally intelligent, or what somebody might call like emotional governance, is a whole other capacity to tap into. It's a whole other confidence piece to step into, to know, okay, I can do this and I can do this well, and not to think, oh, it's just going to happen by osmosis. Or,
Mm.
yes. And I think
Absolutely.
a lot of times very smart people, especially those that have been um, hardworking and they've seen the results of the fruit of their labor, they sometimes think that other people are going to know what they know, or they're going to be as quick as they are. And everybody starts
Mm.
somewhere. And so I think
Yeah.
that's one of the lovely parts of this conversation. So let me pivot for a moment to the money piece, because I know one of the things you've brought up is money habits. And so the next gen or the
Mhm.
future generations could say, well, I see Linda and her husband, and they're living the good life on a boat. And so I'm
Mm,
going to expect that they're going to buy me an Audi for the holidays. And yet you've
yeah.
said when it comes to money habits, or maybe you could start us off. What are some of your thoughts here?
Um, I think that, again, everybody's circumstances are different. So the expectations of maybe the kids and things are different. Um, from a personal perspective, again, I don't think that people are building a legacy so that they can pass it on to a family member, that they go and buy a sports car and wrap it around a tree 2 weeks later. That's not success. That's not the tick in the box that they are wanting that to have. And I think, money habits start young. And, when our kids are small, what are we teaching them? But also as the originators of that wealth, potentially, that we've imbibed money values from our family of origin. And so there definitely is a reflection around what things did I learn? What things were good about what I learned? Because, this is not family bashing, but there will be some great stuff and there will be some other things that you kind of reflect on. You kind of go, actually, that was not so good, or that screwed me up for a while. And those kind of things. And even within your own family, with your own children, you have different responses to what money does to them. I have 2 adult children. One is a saver, one is a spender. They've grown up in the same house with the same stuff, but their way of relating to money is quite different. I was having this conversation earlier with my husband. He has sisters and he is the only boy. And so there were some differences around how a boy got treated to how girls got treated. Andrew's dad had really quite expensive hobbies, but there was no money for family things, really. And so there's a mismatch you could reflect on and kind of go, hey, at the time, it was just what we as a family did. But actually, when you look back, you kind of go, I'm not sure that was all quite how we would have thought that Dad might have handled that. But it is what it is. That's your environment. And it's only really as you kind of look back that you perhaps are able to see some of those disparities.
Yes, that's an excellent point. And I know that on prior podcasts, you brought up this idea of pocket money or an allowance, and that being one place to
Mm,
start regarding practicing those skills. And at that same time, you just highlighted and brought up the environment. So even if the children received a certain allowance or pocket money each week of
mm,
$50 or $100 or whatever that amount was, let's say in exchange for doing chores or
mm,
just doing um, yeah, their homework and getting good grades in terms of that sense of responsibility and ownership
mm,
of
mm,
their even just making their bed in the morning, cleaning their room, little small stuff like that.
mm,
And yet, having said that, they're in this culture, this atmosphere, this environment regarding. But if my parents are buying the luxury car and they're enjoying the vacation, there could also be a mismatch of, well, why do I only get $50 or $100 when they have
mm.
access to so
This
much
is,
more? And that could be that. What are your thoughts right now?
mm. Well, I suppose the backdrop to that is that between myself and my husband, um, we tried to work out what we called enoughness. So
Oh,
what is
good.
enough?
Okay.
And now I say that not with a poverty mindset, but because um, we've always lived in nice houses. Um, we've always had vehicles. We've only had one car. I know there's anathema to people in America, but we've only ever had one car at one time. Um, but because we could make that work, um, and we travelled quite extensively with our children when they were very small to lots of countries around the world. Um, and part of that was a philanthropic, charitable element that we were very strongly engaged in, and so were our children, because we had a kind of, it's really good to give, but it's even better to go and see and give. So we used to go and see. What are you doing? Right? How is this helping? Can we come and see how it's helping? And the boys used to come along with us. And those things were absolutely formative for our family. And so enoughness and deciding how much is enough was really critical. In addition to that, we did something called Debt Proofing Your Kids, which is actually an American lady, Mary Hunt. I don't know if she's still around, but she had a system that was called Debt Proofing Your Kids, and setting up an expectation of what money your children would receive, which was a little bit age appropriate because it reflected slightly different responsibilities. And they had to have two lots of saving pots. They had to have a short-term saving pot and a long-term saving pot. So they wouldn't get the long-term saving pot until they were 18. So ordinarily, something like they would be saving towards their first car or getting driving lessons or something like that. And short term might be something within the next 3 to 6 months, something like that. They wanted a new skateboard, a new guitar, an extra drum, all of those kind of things that were more than what you could just say, hey, I'm just going to buy it tomorrow. But it wasn't such a long while away that you were saying, it's going to take you 3 years to buy that, because it was just too far a stretch. And they had to account for every penny that they spent. And they had to write it all down. And it wasn't necessarily for us, as in we were hovering over them and saying, why have you spent that money on sweets or whatever it was. It was more that they knew where their money was going. And like I say, that was the framework that Mary Hunt set out as part of Debt Proofing Your Kids. And we thought it was absolutely brilliant. Can highly, highly recommend it. Interestingly, when we told our friends who had similar aged children what we were doing, they were horrified. They were like, oh my gosh, why are you doing that? Those poor children. We did not think that. We thought we were upskilling our children, and we never regretted it because they worked within that framework, and at the point where they were becoming adults and working, etc., etc., we felt that we had given them enough skills, and how they managed their own finances kind of beyond that was more about them and less about us hovering over them and hoping they would make the right decisions and not be stupid and all those sorts of things. So yeah.
What I love about that is that you were entrusting them with a little bit of power, and that power being money of the jars.
Yeah.
And what I also love about that is the underlying current of curiosity regarding what is enough compared to the shaming of, walking back to the parents to ask for more. So they
Yeah.
then associated money with growth compared to associating money with pain, for instance. And because a lot of the times, let's say for that short-term jar, if the answer to that question, let's say, what is enough, is an underlying motivation or an underlying need or void that needs to be filled, whether it's like, let's say, for instance, they wanted more clothes for school. The underlying need could be belonging, fitting in. And yet, when there is that curiosity of what is enough, that then explores what are the motivations of why somebody's buying that thing. Is it for that feeling of, again, acceptance and belonging, or is it some other undercurrent that never gets to be explored? Because I made that joke early on of okay, well, thank you for the $50 or $100, but we would like the luxury car. But the underlying message is it that they're feeling the pain of bullying because they don't have the right shoes or they don't have the right outfit? But what I also loved about what you shared is that you modeled it. So when you and your husband went, whether it was overseas, I think you've spoken about traveling to India and to other countries, they then get to witness you and your husband showing them that money is a tool.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
because people
Absolutely.
will watch. Yeah, more than
Mm.
they'll watch your feet more than the words that are spoken.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And it was a very deliberate choice to take them to those places and to I mean they were you know look back and I think my poor children, I probably traumatized them, but there were some really really tough situations. We were in the slums of Delhi. We've been to the slums of Delhi lots of times, and um but kids are brilliant at being able to, they find a football, doesn't matter what size you are, what color you are, whether you speak the language, whether you don't, everybody knows how to play football, kick a ball around. Everybody, well, cricket mainly, probably in India, everybody can, find, something to set up. And kids are brilliant at being able to cross those divides and do it so well. And so they saw that these were children that were born into a very different circumstance to perhaps the one that they had been born into. And it wasn't about making them feel guilty. It was about saying, hey, there's another world, out there, that people don't all live like we do.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and
Mm.
that's fantastic because you were able to get them out of their bubble, might I say, to expand it,
Yeah.
to know that
Mm.
there's another reality that people live. So again, if they're feeling that peer pressure of having to keep up with the Joneses or these days the
Mm.
Kardashians, they can also
Yes.
realize that there's another world that where people are surviving. And it's not about the rules of like
Hmm.
the Gilded Age or fitting in, and they're just trying to survive. It's interesting. A lot of times Americans, and there's poverty in America, but oftentimes Americans can become
Mm.
irritated when their electricity gets turned off because the electricity company is upgrading the poles, and there's that pure irritation. And yet there are individuals that have to walk miles every day just to get water, and it's a
Yeah.
whole other world. And yet when we think of
Yeah.
this concept of joy and happiness, they can be so happy because they're so connected to their family
Mm.
members and to their community.
Mm.
And yet it's very interesting because I think you've shined a light on what money can do as a tool. And money
Mm.
isn't just about status. Money can be about
Yeah.
contribution. Money can be about many different hats that we can wear when we allow ourselves to explore this concept where money is a tool that doesn't control us or define us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just, as an intern,
Absolutely.
I was thinking about something the other day that I heard, that entrepreneurs are um, very comfortable with taking risk. And yet at the same time,
Mm.
the depression and mental health around entrepreneurialism is a conversation we often don't have, being that if men get depressed, it's very temporary because males oftentimes associate their worth with their success. And yet they can easily
Mm.
write a plan and pivot out of it. And yet I just found it so fascinating because here are entrepreneurs that are willing to take risks, and yet they can so often define their value, their self-esteem, and their place in society based on their results. And yet, again, it's temporary. One
Yeah.
day their portfolio could be amazing, and then and again they
Mm.
can make a plan and then find new investors the next day. But so that's wonderful. Thank you
Yeah.
for those principles. Is there anything else you would like to speak into regarding money habits, whether it's starting young or expanding the box?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have sort of, touched on this, but being deliberate about generosity, which isn't only money. But it comes from the decision to be generous. So whatever you're generous with, which obviously includes money, um, but giving money away um, comes with responsibility, because me putting X pounds, dollars into the hands of someone else, whether that's a homeless person on the street or whether that's a charitable organisation that you really want to support, it comes with responsibility. And we have to acknowledge that responsibility just as much as we're saying, hey, how can we work together? We we were very careful to not be patronising to the organisations we worked with, where we would kind of go, "Here, have some money," and it just be a little bit sickly. And in fact, there were a number of times where we said, "This is what we'd like to give. This is over a period of X years, but you don't tell anyone that we've given it to you. And this
Oh,
is an
that's
arrangement between us and you." And and
to have it be done
the
discreetly, quietly.
absolutely, because the primary reason for giving them money was because we trusted the charity to keep delivering the brilliant work that they were delivering. We really didn't want it to be a reflection on us, and that would, create some, maybe some unwanted questions that we didn't really want to answer. So it was more a case of just saying, "Hey, this is an arrangement, but we'd like to keep this arrangement quite private between the two of us." And they were very, very respectful of that. And in fact, we were at a fundraising event just literally 2 weeks ago in London. This is a charity that we've worked with for at least 25 years. And the person who was speaking is one of the founders of the charity. And he actually reminded us that was one of the things that we'd said 25 years ago, saying, "Please don't tell anyone." And he, in that room, told people. But it was kind of like, I think after 25 years, I think we're fine about it now. So, and, we have continued to support them. But it wasn't high on our priority to be recognised as being one of the funders. Because the truth of the matter is, we are only one of the funders. It's not our charity. We are here to work with people. We don't work, we're not imposing. We're not saying, "And now you must do this, and you must run your organisation," or "I want a plaque on the wall," or whatever it is. It's, we want to be in partnership with you. We have the money, you have the skills. Brilliant.
Yes. I love how that is values-based compared to ego-driven.
Mm.
Yes. I'm going to ask about your
It's
values.
really easy. Mm-mm.
Yes. I'm going to
Yeah,
ask
it's
about
easy to be. Sorry,
go ahead.
go on. You
Go
go.
ahead. I'm going to ask about your values in a little bit, but I think that honors some
Mm.
value within your identity, within your husband's identity, and towards the latter part of today's conversation, I'll ask you to
Mhm.
speak about values. But I find that a wonderful example again, because when other people are watching the example that you're setting, you're walking it, and so
Yeah, and some people will say that there's been some influence there, but equally we have also been influenced by others, and that's how this thing goes around. It's not,
and they're good examples.
and some people have been, maybe not understood some of the motivation behind that, and and have felt that money should be diverted to them or to other things, and not in the way that we did. Now they can have their opinion. I'm not seeking their opinion, but that they're fine to have their opinion. But yeah, I mean, when money does very funny things to people, as we know.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm just loving the personal agency that you made around money. This is what money is going to do for us. This is how we're going to handle the money. This is how we're going to have the emotions and the feelings around money, and also the
Mm,
boundaries regarding
mm,
acceptance of other people's opinions. Because again, I go back to the thing about the Joneses and how much will other people's opinions then influence, and
yeah.
it's individual for each investor when they get to that point. And I think it's lovely also that you have positive role models around you, and also how lovely it
Mm,
is that you notice those positive role models. One of the questions I oftentimes ask clients as well as podcast guests are, who were those positive role models? Because
mm,
we all have positive role models around us, whether they're in the media or they're historic, even if they're not in our life directly, that we can choose to learn from. It's
mm,
looking at the glass as half full. Yes.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, in preparing heirs, how can investors prepare themselves? Are there key questions that they could bring up or topics? One of the things that is often talked about is how important constant communication is, but
Mm.
do you lean towards quarterly meetings, weekly meetings? What are some of
Mhm.
how might
Yeah.
you navigate
I
that
mean,
terrain?
yeah. I think the real starting point is prepare yourself. You need to know what it is that what your end game of that preparing these heirs is going to be, and really where you're driving. You might not disclose that at the very beginning, but there is a preparation, there is an internal work of really thinking it through for yourself as to what am I doing. Don't get hung up on the how and the what. Really concentrate on the why. Why am I doing this? Why? It's deeper than, well, I'm just supporting good causes, or I want to bless my children. Lots and lots of people, of course, want to do that. But if there is a level of wealth that these children could be investing, um, it doesn't start with them, it starts with us. It starts with us as the parents, the creators of that wealth, and how maybe we've received it from a future, an older generation. But, it's honouring that, and also working out exactly what is the purpose of this, and why am I doing it? What's going to really thrill me that happens to this money, and what could potentially disappoint me, and actually what responsibility do I have to not set some handcuffs on that money and say you can only have it if you do it my way. I suggest people don't do that. If they want it to if they want that next generation to be engaged, they've got to be given some leeway in making those decisions. But you've got to set some foundation for that. And whatever that might mean. For us, it was, some charitable stuff. It was taking the kids with us. That's all very deliberate choices that we have been making. But I think that, as well, there's no shame in perhaps needing some help with that either as a parent. And, if it's kind of like, well, actually, I don't really know how to do that, that's fine. That's fine to acknowledge that. There's, there are going to be some people out there who are going to be able to help you. If you learnt some stuff from your parents around money, what are the kids learning about you about how you're handling money? And again, that's about, those parents reflecting on that.
A very honest
How has
question.
it shaped you? Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, this is tough stuff. If you're going to do it well, it takes thought, it takes time, it takes that whole mulling over. It's not kind of like, well, we're going to set up this, a charity or a structure or a trust, and actually this is how we're going to do it. As I think there's a lot more to that, because it's involving, as I mentioned earlier, the messy stuff, which is the emotional and the relational stuff. That is tricky as soon as you introduce something like blended families, where, is that an expression you have in America? Blended
Yes, yes,
families,
yeah,
where
and I
divorced
just
families, children.
yes, yes, and divorce is very common. I just wanted to add to what you were saying that love, like success, as well as money, are amplifiers, and so the things that an individual might not want to see about themselves. Whew,
Yeah,
yes, that's why
it's
this
hard.
to walk forward is going to multiply the blessings. And having said that, that individual has to not be faint of heart, because there's going to be some feedback, perhaps, that they have to be
Yeah,
able to accept,
yeah,
especially if they've been so
absolutely.
successful, they've been surrounded by yes people. The buck really stops
Mm,
here. Please
yeah,
continue
yeah, yeah.
regarding
So,
blended families.
yeah, there's so within that family, you've got the potential of blended families. you've got the potential of maybe some disability, that needs careful consideration. You maybe have addiction. Again, that's a really tricky way of thinking about what do you need to put in place appropriately to help somebody protect themselves from themselves. And if they're about to potentially have access to assets, money, wealth, whatever, you're going to need some really careful thought around that and really careful communication around how that all gets talked about. In my in the people that I've spoken to, it is probably the people who have like a disabled child who are the most organised, because they know that this child may never be able to care for themselves, or they may to a degree, but beyond that. And again, in my experience, that's why some people have actually become property investors, because they've needed to say, we have to think about a long-term solution for our child who needs this level of care 24 hours a day for the rest of its life. And we are responsible for putting the things in place to do that. How are we going to do it? And so they have often kind of turned to property as one of those things where they think, okay, we think this is going to answer that. And they're often almost an exclusive group because the sense of responsibility is so great and the care for their child is also so great that they're just kind of like, we have to keep working until we have all of those things in place, which, is a tricky one.
Yes.
Jem, sorry, I was going to interrupt you a bit.
I just wanted to add to what you were sharing, that I think that when a family does have a disabled child or a child with autism, etc., it almost forces them to increase their awareness, because no one else is going to do it. But what I love about what you have shared regarding blended families, it's almost as if there's a group of individuals, a group of humans, and it's just who they are coming together as a team in order to make it work, whether they're blood related or it's whatever the outside influences are. Once they're in that room, it's who they are internally that then has to shine and be called forth, brought forth, in order to like, let's say, I'm just going to make this up. You probably don't have a blended family. I'm just going to make this up. So let's say there's Team Southwood, and there's 6 children from different marriages. When those 6 children come together, it's about Team Southwood, regardless of who's married into the family or who feels that they were there first. It's just, how are we going to make this football team work or the soccer team work? Team Southwood. Because at the end of the day, it's those individuals bringing out their best to figure out, where do we have those shared values, or what can our identity be outside of just this gift of money, or this asset of money. Yeah, so please continue.
Yeah, well, I do have an example of that.
Please, yes.
Because my parents divorced when I was very small. My dad remarried and went on to have 3 more children. He then emigrated to a different country when I was 15, 16. And so we had a period, myself and my sister had a period where we weren't living together, but we went on a holiday with him and his other family. And then at the point where they immigrated, that kind of stopped. My dad died without a will. He said he would never die. Clearly that did not work out well for him. And actually I think the avoidance around having a will was quite deliberate, because it was, how am I going to do 2 children by this woman and 3 children by this woman? And I think he couldn't work it out, so he just didn't do it. Now, I have to say that was his choice, and he chose to do it that way. That was, yeah, I don't feel any business towards my dad, because I think you chose it, Dad. And if you had wanted it a different way, then you would have found some way of making a provision for myself and my sister. And he didn't. Now, that's fine. That is what he chose to do. It didn't have to be like that. I think
It
that's my
didn't.
point.
And it's so interesting. I think oftentimes men, but women too, they ask this question of how can I win? And if they have
Mm,
some women there, it's who do I make happy where I can win? And you're absolutely right. He could have definitely found a way, and it takes emotional depth and emotional strength to figure out, okay, this is a brand new football game. This is a brand new puzzle. How do I navigate this
mm,
jigsaw puzzle? Because again, when we're growing up, if we're blessed enough to have an upbringing that talks about emotional intelligence, we're very lucky. But many times, people do not have these conversations at the kitchen table, the dining room table, the
yeah,
holiday meals. It is, um, I mean, I can even share that my parents don't want to talk about money. And it's very
mm,
interesting because they would have been
yeah,
so much better if they did. And I did dig. And um, and it's interesting because there's also a little bit of entitlement that can come with any generation or any member of, well, I earned this money, it's my money, don't touch it. And that's so fascinating, because then where is the opportunity then for the next generations to practice with money where they can make the mistakes and not be shamed for it?
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
it just like mortality is a very sensitive subject, just as money is. It can either bring
Mm,
up the best, or it can just make somebody shut down because they
yeah,
don't know how to navigate this. And this is where sometimes I talk about this idea of role models of, how did his parents handle it?
mm, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we often don't, as you rightly say, we don't often have enough examples of those things to say, oh, yeah, I kind of like what they did over there. But I also think that what they did over there was really good as well. Maybe we could combine a bit of both. Or, my experience and the experience I've had with talking to people about legacy, they don't seem to have anywhere near the variety or the amount of examples to actually kind of pull from and say how are we going to do this. I think at the point where children grow and obviously have partners and marriages themselves, what do you do with in-laws? Do you involve that daughter-in-law? Do you invite that son-in-law into this legacy conversation? Could they bring something? I'm of the belief that sometimes those people that are married into the family rather than necessarily blood relatives can be bridges. If there's a tension between the sort of nuclear family, I think they can act quite well as bridges. And so, just again, echoing what you said earlier, Angelina, about that kind of just being open to something slightly different, and actually rather than thinking, oh no, this is all about the family, we just keep it amongst ourselves and we swear each other to secrecy and things. There are other people that maybe bring something. One of the things that I try to help people really think through is what I call skill and will. So some people might have the right skills to have either manage investments and for the long term, or they might have money management skills, or they might have interpersonal relationship skills. But they might be quite high on the skill list, but they might be quite low on the will. So yeah, I could do it, I just don't want to, kind of deal. And conversely, you might get some people who are really high on will. Let me be involved, I really want to help, but actually maybe quite low on skill. Well, what do you do? What are you bringing to the table? Is, how are we going to incorporate that enthusiasm, which is great, but actually we need some skill here. And so, again, just a kind of gentle challenge to the founders of this wealth, that if there's a skills gap or a knowledge gap, then how could you fill that? Is there some training? Is there some kind of experience that you could give that person if they are enthusiastic and really are, batting, for you? Then, could you increase their skill? I think it's a bit different if they're high on skill and low on will. I think if you force someone or you appoint them, with a responsibility and expect them to be grateful for it, when in fact they're giving you all the vibes of not fussed, to be honest, can't be doing with it, then I think you have to have an acknowledgement of maybe they will come round, but that's forcing someone to take on a responsibility,
versus their inner
perhaps not
interest.
be. Yeah, that I think you could be setting yourself up for a fall and some conflict down the line somewhere. So there are those things to consider, which again I don't know that people are often talking about those in terms of family meetings. Or I'm a really, really great believer in family meetings. I've worked in children's social care for 10 years with my local government, and I convene family meetings. That's my job. And so I bring these disparate people together often. Sometimes they are warring, sometimes they are, quite together. But, there is a reason why they have a social worker involved in their family. And this is not the same as somebody with a legacy. We're not talking about a potential removal of a child from a family, whereas within the social care structure, that can be the issue that we're trying to deal with. So you're dealing with people that are highly anxious, very, very emotionally charged, because somebody is saying, this has to be improved or we're taking your kids. And
The stakes are
working
high
in that environment, the stakes are really high.
in
The
both
stakes are
scenarios.
different. Yeah, absolutely. The stakes are different in the legacy scenario, but they're still meaningful. There's still a lot of investment and a lot of emotion and often a lot of anxiety around those things, just as much. But, bringing people together to say, hey, take back some power. What do you want to do as a family about this situation? And helping them, find their own plan that makes sense for them, for their child, that is realistic. It's got to be realistic and it's got to be practical. There's no point in saying, these kind of high, we're going to
Ideals.
go away for a month, together every year. It'll be amazing. No, it won't. You'll hate it. And you'll hate each other by the time you come back. Have a day together or an afternoon. That might be where you can start. Set some expectation of how you might increase something. Don't set the bar so high and get really disappointed because you want everyone to really be engaged in this. This is a long-term journey. And I think the view has to be small steps, bite-sized pieces at a time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I liked what you shared about how in-laws can be bridges, because I think oftentimes they don't have the same emotional triggers because they don't have the
No,
history of the family. So they can be very
yeah,
objective. And even if they get
yeah,
baited, the bait doesn't work because they don't have the
yeah,
history emotionally.
absolutely, absolutely. Because they're like, I see your tricks. I know what you've done because I'm an observer to this family and I know exactly what you do. You're not playing that one on me. And so,
Right.
yeah, you're absolutely right. They have a slightly more objective position that can often be an absolute gift to this family if it's received as a gift.
Yes.
And that's
Well, yes. And it's so interesting because they could call out certain things because, again, they don't know the silent rules of what is supposed to be stuffed underneath the carpet.
yes, yes, absolutely. When somebody else is saying, why do you do that? Nobody else is like, oh, heart attack. What you've just mentioned, the unmentionable.
Right, right, because the internal family members may have been already trained between age 4 and 10 to not bring that subject up, or there could be
Yeah,
intense pain, but the in-laws don't have that
yeah,
reference point, so they can
yeah.
just blurt out, we need to stop that pattern, and it could be the most
Mhm,
amazing thing. Or they could just blurt out, why is nobody acknowledging the positive attribute, in that individual? And so, yeah, I think it changes the dynamics and the energy, and
mhm.
absolutely. So then it's back to, how do we make this team work? Lovely, thank you. Do you have any other stories you would like to share around good money habits or impact?
Um, Maybe just a story about the impact that has really been really impactful for us. So, um, we have been involved in philanthropic work in other countries, but this is another India story. And we provided a mobile clinic that would go into this particular slum in Delhi. There was no way of getting a building into the slum because it was sandwiched between a scrapyard metal area, which was filthy, absolutely filthy, it's still there, and a railway track. And this little strip of makeshift shacks that had been popped up and it became a slum. And so having a mobile clinic would be able to drive in and conduct things like vaccinations for children, obviously checking illnesses in elderly people, but also things like antenatal care and postnatal care for pregnant mums. And um, and through a whole series of events. So on the year that we started, because we've kept in contact with this charity over the years, we had the founder of the charity, and he brought along with him one of the slum boys. And what this charity does is that they are able to, their focus, one of their key focuses is on education. So they help the children. The Indian education system is not brilliant, even though they clearly have some brilliant people as part of their country. And it's always amazing to me that people can live in the most terrible degrees of poverty and yet give them an opportunity to learn. And it just is like a sponge. And they just like, oh, I love it. And so education is a way out of poverty for them. And that's one of the key areas, as well as healthcare, for this charity. So, and we worked out that the founder who had brought the slum boy with him, that his mum would have been treated with this mobile clinic in that slum that was sandwiched between the scrap metal yard and the railway when we first funded them. And so he's now in Sydney doing a master's in Sydney University, completely funded by this charity, and he will come back and he will get his family out of poverty and he will give back to the people in that same slum. And it's one of those impact stories. So you kind of go, if we hadn't done that, what would happen to him? Don't know, because it's an improbable question. But we, through a really strange series of events, have met him now several times, and his name is Tushar. And it's like, my gosh, it is the same year. His birth year was the same year that this mobile ambulance went into the slum where he was living. Or I should, maybe it's surviving. It's not really living. It's absolutely filthy. It's the most appalling um, thing that you would want to live in at all. But it was just the most amazing sense of timing and coincidence, if there is such a thing, of those things coming together. It was just fantastic. And so it's one of our stories that it's my legacy. That's what I'm taking, from what I've been able to contribute into that. And this young man is going to be absolutely fabulous, as are many of the other kids in the same slum.
Yes, it brings such a good feeling.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. So yes, those are the things that that are, I think, investing in my own family, my own children are, I consider them to be contributing adults. In fact, my youngest lives in America with his American wife and my grandchildren. So that's been a lovely connection for us. And and what they're doing, and families that I've worked with over the last 10 years in social care as well. That's those are things that you're just a very small touch point with those families, and yet they go on to do where they go on to often, very often, to have their children remain with them. And so it's then kind of, hey guys, it's now up to you to kind of make that work for you really well.
Yes, I think that's absolutely lovely. Thank you for that real life story, that you are walking your
Mm.
values and willing to go somewhere and to get your hands dirty and to have the courage to go right into the middle of where there is need and turn that into a miracle story, because of that you held the space for the potential for these individuals, and they've stepped up and stepped into it, and now you're getting to
Yeah.
see the fruit of that.
Yeah.
Because you have the courage
That's
to
right.
take a chance outside of the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I in my experience has just been that, kind of finding a charity that as a family you can all kind of access and get involved in. It's much more neutral than because you're looking to do something for someone else, and that kind of takes the spotlight off, is he going to get more than I am? Is she going to get that and I'm not going to get that? Who's going to get the house in Malibu? Or whatever it is. It's much more neutral to then find something that as a family you can really join together on. And that might change, 1 year it might be, about, homelessness. Another year it might be about, rescuing horses, or, those things are about reflecting, the kind of passions from within the family, which I think, like I say, because it's about other people, the focus is shifted in a much more positive way. That's my experience.
Yes, and gratitude's a wonderful emotion in service to others. So
Certainly.
one of the challenging conversations that I know that sometimes you will have is weaving in the subject of creating a legacy. And when you will directly ask someone, what could you be known for? So how do you weave in this challenging question?
Yeah. It kind of comes back to that why. Why are you doing this? And and sometimes that's about projecting forward and saying, imagine yourself, it's your funeral, and you're kind of, listening in. What do you want people to say about you? And I'm sure what people will say will be, very good things. But what do you want? What are the words that you want them to say and you want to hear them say? Because if people are generically say, she was a good woman, or he was a successful businessman, or, she, was incredibly creative and would be able to, even in difficult circumstances, would still have a smile on her face, or she turned her hand to, business, and it was just, admirable what she was doing, whatever. But, what are the things that are really important to that person to say, actually, what can I do to influence what we are going to be known for? And yeah, that could be a charitable arm, but if it's going to be a generosity, then what does that look like? If it's going to be championing a cause, and that might be a whole varied thing, that could be a political cause or, whatever that is. What does that actually look what like? What is one aspect of that you feel that you could really kind of get your teeth into to say, I want to be influenced by, and I want to influence in this situation, and have that two-way kind of thing where it's not about, I've said this before, it being done to people. It's coming alongside and it's doing it with people. So who are the with people that you really want to with people with, and just kind of, think about that. Just really kind of dig deep on what would someone write on my headstone. Joe was really good at, what was that like? Mary was amazing when she was doing this. So many people were changed when Angelina, decided that this could no longer happen. Something had to change. It's all those sorts of things that connect with the who we are on the inside, and not being afraid to kind of, you don't have to spread yourself super thin. This isn't about, having hundreds of things or, whatever. If it's only one thing and it's your one thing, hey, find your one thing. Really find your one thing.
Lovely. How can a coach be useful in this process?
Well, I became a coach mainly because I like asking questions. That's one of the reasons why I became a coach. But in addition to asking questions, that it's about teasing out of people what is inside. I feel like I'm a miner and I'm digging around, and we'll find the gold that has just been maybe a little bit hidden, or it's just got squashed in the corner. Yeah, because of other things that are kind of going on. Or sometimes it's not always, popular to kind of say, hey, this is what's really kind of going on inside of me. There are expectations that people want you to stay the same. And so there might be a kind of avoidance on the inside where people go, oh, I can't do that. And so a coach is about drawing out some of those really key motivators for someone. And, that's an important part of it. And, and there are lots of things that can come up around, well, how do I begin to talk about to my family? And, I have a bit of a framework that I take people through that kind of, we discuss those things. How do you set the foundations? How do you have that kind of connecting back in with those dreams, your own private reflections? How do you look at what's the risk of not talking about this stuff? It's one thing to talk about it, but what do I do if I don't talk about it?
What's
at risk? Yeah. What isn't going to happen if I don't bring this up? How you might introduce it to the family. And that's deliberately not the first thing that we talk about. It's deliberately a little way down that process because it isn't the first thing. It's all of that other foundational work that happens first. I have an expression of, if you're going to talk to one another, who's going to have a seat at the table? And you can decide who gets a seat at the table. So in my mind, it's an analogy of a kitchen table, and you're inviting people to come to the table. But who gets a seat? And that might be, a daughter-in-law or a sister-in-law, or and it may not be all of the in-laws. And there may be some people that actually you can't invite to the table at this point in time. That's the complexity of family. That's not about being mean and, horrible to people. That's just called family dynamics. And, and there's some of that could be repaired and maybe not. We don't have a magic wand about these things. And then actually, how can you together kind of reimagine, and tell stories about what it is that you've done. And I think it's really important for the founders of a legacy to tell the stories of how they've got there. Because kids might be quite surprised to know, actually, did you know that we had a business that went bust? And we didn't know what we were going to do. And so we just thought, we're just going to have to try something else. And they might be going, I never knew you did that. I never knew that you had it just went bust. What do you mean? If they've been used to a certain standard of living, that could be but it's such a great story to say, this is where we came from. This is why this is so important to us. And we want you to respect it. And we want you to value it. This is why we're taking this time out to actually reimagine what this could look like beyond us. And it's such a powerful exercise to do. It really is. So,
I think
that's.
Sorry, I was just going to share that. I think that speaks into like those moments of, dare I say, desperation or hard times, and how did they navigate that? Because those are the moments. I mean, everybody kind of loves drama. Like, tell me about the drama. And yet, if it is relevant to like where they arrived today and how they prevailed, that it was messy at that moment, and it was, and it was. Yeah, they weren't sure if there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and yet they still put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Not knowing if it would work out. Trusting.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Absolutely.
They'd be on the edge of their seats,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Since this is a legacy podcast, what does this word mean to you? And what would you like your holistic legacy to be?
I've been giving this some thought, and I've got a quote actually, and this is from the Atomic Habits blog with James Clear, but the quote is from Nick Cave. Could I read it, please?
Yes, please.
Our deeds, no matter how insignificant they may feel, or we may feel, they are replete with meaning and of vast consequence, that they constantly impact upon the unfolding story of the world, whether we know it or not. And having a legacy can be for the glory, but it's so much better, I think, to think of it as we won't ever know how many more things or people will be impacted by that maybe one very simple decision that started whenever, to say, actually, whatever I can do with this wealth or this money and passing it on, the consequences are vast. And they can be so incredibly pivotal and changing for so many people that we will never meet and we may never know about. But that's not a reason not to do it.
Oh, that's lovely. I will have to ask you to email me that quote so I can make sure that it's in the description, the show notes. Yeah, that's so lovely. What values are the most important to you? I know before in this episode, this conversation, you talked about being discreet when giving, not waving a gigantic flag of look at me, look at me. So what values do you get to honor today and then also to project into the future?
Yeah, I think that my values around those things are I want to work with people who I feel a connection with, not only to the work they may be doing, but also to them themselves. And so, you know, whatever that relationship is, whether that's a professional relationship, whether that's a philanthropic relationship, whether that's a work relationship, this is about connection, and it's about valuing, you know, that connection, and it's about respect in that connection. It's about growing together in whatever that relationship is. And those are the things that are really important to me. You know, whether that be long term or short term, there just is a sense of community, you know, a sense of doing this together, because we're better off doing it together than doing it apart and on our own. And that's kind of really one of my, you know, my top values around legacy.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm hearing connection, respect, education, growth, community as 5 possible values. Very wonderful. And one of my final questions is how are you developing your legacy today, and what are a few obstacles? I think I'm hearing that the way that you're developing your legacy is probably through your philanthropic work and holding these conversations and being courageous enough to ask for these conversations. But what say you?
Yeah. So part of my legacy is as part of my coaching business and my framework that I have, that people can access that. And if that is something that people are interested in, if they would like to have a conversation with me, then, you know, that's I would love that, and I'd be very happy to, you know, kind of you know, there's no hard sell at all. This is you know, we can do a Zoom together. That would be no problem at all, because I'm keen that people are able to take some steps forward to build their own legacy. So that's definitely the impact that I want to leave, you know, on the world. I want to actually, you know, from a very personal point of view, I have 2 grandchildren and another one on the way, and having that generation to, you know, invest in as well is just so important to me. And, you know, it's, you know, having one son here in the UK and one in America, you know, that brings its own, you know, kind of very individual dynamics around what legacy looks like across the pond. It's one that we're up for the challenge for, and working out what really, you know, works for us in that way. I think, you know, the obstacles are they're often so varied and complex, aren't they? Because we could see an obstacle as having one son in the US and one son in the UK. We could kind of go, oh my gosh. So it's either an obstacle that you kind of think, oh my goodness, or it's something you think, I'm really up for the challenge of doing this, because it means we have to think even more creatively about what's important and you know, I have a kind of thing around what's fair and what's equal doesn't look the same. And so if you go down an equal route, you say, well, I have 2 children, so everything's 50-50. There you go. Brilliant. But it isn't, because I have one in America who's married with 2.5 children, and one who's in the UK who currently is not married. And so those things are not equal. And so again, you know, it's not about waiting until one son, you know, kind of catches up with, you know, having more grandchildren for me or whatever. You know, that's kind of like crazy. But, you know, so it's again having to think about, is this an obstacle, or is this just another opportunity for some more creative thinking and some more creative conversations? And I'm opting for the latter.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It definitely does take creativity, especially when the context is another country or the context is another
Yeah.
culture, and being
Yeah.
up for the challenge. Kudos.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Any final thoughts before I read out my closing paragraph?
No, I mean, if people want to make contact with me, you have my email address, so
Please
but
share it
I'm
right
happy
now.
to
Please
stay.
share your
Yeah, so
website.
it's Linda Linda at Colbone, which is CULBONE coaching.co.uk.
Wonderful, wonderful. It
Thank
has
you
been
for
a
having me, Angelina.
Yes, it's been a real pleasure. I think the depth and the class that you've brought into the subject is wonderful. I think that to have a reference point where somebody can be discreet about their wealth is an important highlight of the conversation around legacy, that it doesn't have to be so loud. I think a lot of times, especially in the United States, people have this idea of, oh, their name has to be on the side of a library, and that's the only way to do legacy. And
Mm,
it's not. There's so many
mm,
other flavors of ice cream, metaphorically, of how it can be developed and executed, that I just love the fact that you've been so intentional as well as creative about it.
mm. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, I will read out the closing paragraph. In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends. Or if you're tuning in on YouTube, please remember to share once again, subscribe, like, and thank you so much for joining us this week once again. And thank you, Linda, for speaking into your legacy.